Hello, everyone. I'm Najeeb Baqui, founder and managing director of Tinsley Park, a private equity platform and an advisory firm. I also decided to create Tinsley Park Talks, this program, which is a global networking and leadership platform that brings together leaders from finance, technology, and public policy. In this digital series, we interview leading entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, and intellectuals. Our goal on these talks is to provide a platform to share great ideas that are shaping the future and allow you guys access into the minds of these industry leaders. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Shiva Kumar. Shiva Kumar is the Chief Financial Officer at Ridecell, a leading global fleet IoT automation platform provider based in Silicon Valley that is bringing digital transformation to fleet-driven businesses. Shiva grew up in India and studied electrical engineering, or EE, at the IIT, which is sort of the MIT of India, IIT Bombay, and then moved to the US to do his master's at UCLA, where he was awarded scholarship throughout the program. While at UCLA, he completed the UCLA's Anderson School of Management's technology business plan and secured top positions. He later joined as a product engineer in a startup that was later acquired by Intel Corporation. After 7 patents and 5 years at Intel, Shiva decided to go to business school at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management, which later landed him in the world of investment banking, where he spent more than a decade at Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, and most recently at Jefferies. Shiva lives with his wife and children in Menlo Park, and it's my pleasure to have you, Shiva, as our guest to the Tinsley Park's inaugural episode. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Najeeb. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be the inaugural guest for your podcast. Look, you're doing some amazing work in providing capital advisory to promising tech disruptors. I remember when we talked for the first time, I knew we'll be doing a lot of things together. So pretty excited to be here.
Same here, likewise. Very excited as well. So Shiva, I guess let's start off this series by just going right into it. So, we just read your background. You're originally from India. You came to US, went to great schools, had really early on very good success. And maybe if you just help us visualize your journey from where you've come from and how in your career, what the turning points were, and what personal and professional events led you to be here where you are today.
Absolutely, Najeeb. Look, as you pointed out, I grew up in India. I actually grew up in a very small town in India. While growing up, I was focused on just playing sports. I played sports all day long.
Tell us about the sports you played. Yeah.
That's right. We talked about cricket in detail. I played cricket, a variety of sports, actually. I still play ping pong, which is a table tennis in India. I played at the national level, which was fantastic.
Wow.
But it was great through sports. I gained a lot of skills, life skill sets, and I truly believe that one can learn to focus, make friends, motivate teams. But it was really when you asked me this question before, and I was thinking about it. There are so many events that shapes a person's life journey, and it's very difficult to crystallize into 4 or 5. So, but to the extent I can think about, there are 5 events or turning points in my life that has brought me to where I am today. I think the first one was when I got into IIT. I did EE, as you mentioned, at IIT Bombay. There for 4 years. It's a big campus, outskirts of main Bombay. There are about, like, in my class, or my class, about 400 people. So you're
Oh, wow.
surrounded by really, really smart people who understood, who were starting their career in technology, or even business phase. So during that 4-year period, I literally, I would say, experimented and evolved in various facets, where I was focused only on, when I was entering into IIT, I was just probably knew a little bit of sports, I knew a little bit of academics, but there I explored art, drama,
Wow.
also the yeah, this obviously I played sports there, but more importantly, I learned a ton from the very smart people around me, and
Yeah, just
so
sorry to interrupt. I never imagined, you hear about these institutions like IIT in India, they're highly technically focused, and yeah, I think even viewers that are watching, some of them may be surprised that there's drama and art that were available at electives. I mean, all universities have electives, but the fact that you actually took those courses, that says a lot about how little I know about IIT.
yeah, it is. You won't believe it. It's actually the art and drama. They are fiercely competed within IIT, and obviously there are a lot of music festivals which are organized by IITians, as we call ourselves, in IIT Bombay, which attracts not only IIT folks but also the universities locally, and also across the state lines.
That's very cool.
So after IIT, the second turning point in my career was probably joining the startup while I was pursuing a master's at UCLA. So I got this phenomenal opportunity to work in this startup, which was started by my advisor Bahram Jalali at UCLA. The startup was focused
again,
on.
sorry to interrupt, but after IIT, did you directly go into masters, or did you have any work experience before you went from IIT to UCLA?
I went straight to UCLA for my master's, so no work experience. So this was when I joined the startup. It was my first of the job out right after the college, essentially, and it was great because we were fairly a small team focused on developing optical and electronic chipsets for fiber optical communication. That was back in 2000s, where things were rapidly evolving. There's lots of demand for internet data, and people were trying to solve the backbone of the infrastructure and problems that was arising because of the increased demand on the data side. The company basically ran for about, I think, about 2 years, I would say 2.5 years, and it was acquired by Intel back in early 2000s. The learning for me was I had learned engineering and technology at IIT. Also, I learned at UCLA, but this was the first time that I was seeing the real world application of technology, how it was changing the world, making the systems much more efficient. And then ultimately, obviously, I worked in Intel for about 4 to 5 years. There also, I worked closely with some of the wireless communication network, like Centrino chipsets where came out during my time. So I was very fortunate to see how the technology, which is essentially was more done in the lab, and how it was applied in the world and making a difference.
So you were in the R&D team. Were you actually like one of those guys wearing those Intel suits in the lab, or?
No, I was designing the products. I was not in the fabrication lab. Okay. But we were focused more on the fabless technology rather than a manufacturing.
Was that the time where the fabs were already out of the country? Now they're trying to come back, obviously. But
that's correct. So there were a lot of design houses that were focused at that point of time to just focus on design versus actually doing a vertically integrated a process where you design and also you fabricate and you sell.
Got it.
One of the things that I would say learning for me was just forming the startup, how the team was recruited and grew over time, and ultimately it was sold to Intel. So there was a application not only in the product on the technical side, but also on the business side, because now I see it more and more often where companies are getting formed and they pursue a certain path and that they're acquired by larger strategic, or sometimes obviously they go public. But I got the taste of it very early on in my career, and that opened up at least my vision, my horizon towards the business world. So
your experience was a positive one, sounds like.
My experience was a positive one, and then to some extent I just took as a joke. I thought this is very normal, a very common thing that you join a startup and the startup is acquired or goes public. And during the same time, Broadcom, which is still public, went IPO at that time. So there was a lot of euphoria about how the tech companies are getting formed and unlocking value for the shareholders and the employees. And I thought, by within a few years, I'll work on a couple of startups and I'll be done for life. But obviously,
dream.
As I said, taste of early success.
Right. That's awesome. So then after that, you looked at the business world, the business school, and
that's right. So I was when I was at Intel, as I have seen the company's progress, I wanted to develop more knowledge and experience in the business world, and the natural progression was to get into an MBA school. So I was fortunate enough to get into one of the top MBA programs in the world at Kellogg School of Management. There again, it was a 2-year program. The best thing about the MBA program is it was a class of like 400 people. The best thing about the MBA program is just the sheer talent that comes to the business school with such diverse background, whether they're people from the marketing, general management, entrepreneurs, VCs, private equity, they all come together under one roof. And the amount of information, discussions that take place, it's so enriching. Mm-hmm. And that, I would say, it really helped me to reinforce some of the things that I've learned. I learned at Intel in my startup, but also I learned a ton from other people's experience as well.
That's awesome. Were you used to the weather in Chicago before you moved there?
No, I'll tell you a story. I was that time I was based in San Diego, and before that, a couple of years before, I had come from India, so I had never experienced cold weather like Chicago. So the first time I landed in Chicago was in March, and you would imagine March at that time is still supposed to be like it's getting warmer, but it wasn't. I got a California puffy jacket and I landed in Chicago. And I still remember the day when I was waiting at the bus stop, waiting for the bus to come and so that I can go to the campus to visit. God, it was really windy. It was really windy, and it was the first experience with the cold. But Chicago is a great city. I love especially the summertime when the the Lakeshore Drive turns into a gym where people are working out. It's just a great weather.
Yeah, awesome.
So after MBA, I wanted to explore and enhance my kind of the deal experience in the business world. So that took me to investment banking, and I was there for about a decade at various firms, Merrill Lynch, Deutsche Bank, and more recently at Jefferies. One of the things that I actually I was looking for was just focus on the structuring the deals, working on a number of varieties of deals, whether it's mergers and acquisitions or IPOs or capital raises. But I would say that is part of the learning, obviously. But what you end up learning is, again, the type of people that you meet globally. You're working with the clients, you're solving their problems, especially from the capital perspective. And then you're also working with the deal teams, which could be cross-functional, could be across different geographies. So I traveled a ton in Asia as well as across Europe, and that not only helped me to understand, speak the languages that people speak globally, but more importantly, I was able to realize what are the problems and challenges a startup or a larger companies face, and that actually cemented I would say, brought a different dimension to my experience, which is technical finance knowledge, application of finance knowledge, but also the business knowledge that comes into the picture. So that was a great experience on the investment banking side when I think about it, and also the sort of network that you build when you're working there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And not only from your own peers, but also the VCs, financial investors, private equity firms, as well as the larger strategics.
Oh, absolutely. That sounds fascinating. You've kind of covered all gradients of a company, from startup to large corporates, and seeing operations to global perspectives, and then the capital side of it, operating side of it. That's quite a career, Shiva, so far.
No, thank you, Najeeb. I really appreciate it. I feel I was fortunate enough to be in those situations. Obviously, I think I was even more fortunate to have people supporting me and helping me grow. Now I'm at Ridecell. I'm the CFO, but so not only the technical and the finance expertise, but also the experience of working across, whether it's just a startup or across a kind of a larger company environment. And I'm involved in, obviously, internal, but also externally facing with the customers. So again, my learning continues to take place, where I'm learning from the customers, the Ridecell team, and the shareholders. I think one of the things that, as I mentioned to you, Najeeb, was, I'm fortunate enough to talk to folks like you, which is helping me to build upon the more experience that I have, and continue to share my knowledge and experience with you and other folks.
No, absolutely, vice versa. And it's a pleasure to soak in everything that you're sharing today, and everything that I'm learning also about you that I didn't know.
Yeah, so our vision is to move the world better and faster, and we are providing a business and operations platform to the fleets and the OEMs.
Correct. So we're going to come talk more about the actual technology there and what you guys are doing specifically, but just kind of on a macro level, if we were to just look at the recent years and all the disruptive technologies that we've seen, to name a few: artificial intelligence, hear a lot about blockchain, hear a lot about 3D printing, VR, AR, and IoT, which I'm sure you guys have a huge inclusion of IoT in your technology. If you can share with us today sort of your view on how you've, in the last decade and a half to 2 decades of your experience, seen and witnessed these technological innovations disrupting age-old industries, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely, Najeeb. When I think about the evolution of the technology, to look back 10, 20 years ago, technology was literally IT. It was all about improving efficiency. So what I mean by that is technology was literally replacing the paper-based processes with more software, and obviously there was that came a hardware piece to it, and then there is the computers and so on. So there was a lot of digitization that was happening across different industry verticals. And in some cases, in some industries, that continues to happen, by the way. And that is driven by, like in 2010, there was a high-tech act that led to the digitization of the healthcare industry. But the result of what has happened in the last, I would say, 20, 30 years is IT or the tech has proliferated in every facet of our life. We did not, at that time, we did not envision that we'll have a data overload. What I mean to say is there's so much data that we are collecting on a daily basis. We just didn't know how we're going to manage it, how we're going to use the data for improving the business metrics. Tech now, over the last, I would say, 5, 10 years, or even continues to happen in the next 10 to 20 years, is it's going to continue to be a disruptive in areas of building upon these large data sets, whether structured or unstructured data sets, and essentially providing the insights into what this data mean. So all data is not equal. It is essentially sand and not an oil unless you actually convert the data into some sort of an insight.
Correct.
That is happening, I would say, in the last 5 years. What is not happening is the automation, which is probably in the next 5 to 10 years will continue to happen, but that is only started to begin to happen, is essentially using the data set that you're creating insights and ultimately automating some of the processes. Tech is also disruptive in areas where it is breaking down the barriers, making it completely frictionless. Classic example is fintech. It is the other case is obviously the blockchain, where it is breaking down the geos, the US, the government regulations, making it much more efficient, faster, and better. Tech is also, if you look at the 1960s, 70s, everyone is focused on scale because what brings to the economies of scale is the reduction in cost. Right. And there was less of a customization. But now what tech is allowing us to do a lot more customization without sacrificing scale or unit economics. So I believe that these are the key drivers that is helping some of the application of technology. So when I see, for example, AI is essentially just a better form of tech. It has got broad range of applications. For instance, when I was covering healthcare tech at Deutsche Bank, it was all about digitization. But now that same tech, because you have so much information about the patients, because of the drugs, you are able to use the structured and unstructured data for selecting a treatment plan that is much more customized to a certain patient. And I'll bring, this is a little bit more personal. Sure. Journey where as you know, my dad passed away about 2 months ago. He was 81 years old. I hear that. Yeah. And he went through these various phases where he was in the hospital for about 3 weeks, and he was about to get discharged. And then all of a sudden he got this lung infection, bacterial infection. And the natural reaction for the doctors was to pump all sort of antibiotics without even understanding what the bacterial infection was. So as you can imagine, while they're pumping in all super powerful antibiotics in his body, they're trying to figure out what the problem was. Obviously, India is in a different stage compared to the US, but I can see that similar problem exists in the US as well. When I see how tech could be utilized in the next 10 to 20 years, our patients like my dad, they will not be given treatments unless those are specifically can make a significant improvement in his health, whether it's antibiotics or it could be something else. But it is much more tailored and customized to patients. Correct. And I would say the same thing about from a healthcare perspective. There's lots of things going on. If you look at the last 20 years, where the drugs were literally designed in labs. That means people are actually trying to combine various molecules to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And that process is a real long process because you are essentially physically testing it out in the lab. What has happened with the tech is now they're able to do all of that on the computer. And they're able to see whether a certain combination of certain molecules will target and address some of the diseases that we are seeing, whether it's cancer, whether it is AIDS, HIV, whatever that may be. And I think that is a significant leap or significant jump that as humans we are taking using the tech to expedite, to increase the time to market of certain critical drugs. And even for COVID, for example, a lot of pharma companies actually use those AI tools to develop the drugs. So I do believe that AI is going to continue to proliferate, and it will. It's just the healthcare as an example, but I can take multiple industries where AI is helping us do much more efficiently. It's providing us insights and allowing us to do things that are much more meaningful on a personal level.
That's fascinating.
I think continuing on the same trend, the other trend that my kid, my eldest son, actually, he's into blockchain and crypto mining. Actually,
Okay.
he talks a lot about blockchain. The essence is still the same, or the purpose is still the same, where you have this physical and virtual assets out there. How do you actually increase the transparency? How do you increase the efficiency? People are not wasting time in validation in terms of making sure that this is not a fraud transaction. You're able to do that with blockchain. And this is not just specific to just one geo, but it's across globally. So when you think about blockchain has got a huge implication in how we will how the commerce will develop in the next 10 to 20 years, because it is bringing in a greater level of trust, security, and ultimately increased efficiency. The other thing that you mentioned, Najeeb, was the IoT. Look, IoT in my mind has been there for a very long time. At least I can remember 10 to 15 years. The challenge was in order to proliferate and gather data and insight, you need to deploy these IoT sensor devices on a very large scale. So the economies of scale and the cost becomes extremely important. And with the advancement on the hardware side, the IoT, that the cost has come down to such a level that now you can install those IoTs, whether it is just the sensors, the camera sensors, or whether it is sound, whether it is anything else. Those can be installed at home, at the hospitals, in your car, at a much, I would say, without thinking twice about the cost. You can implement them at a much larger scale, and that's the benefit of the IoT. So IoT actually helps us gather information. There's less about the insight and automation, which actually comes on top of it. But right now through the IoT, we are in the phase of gathering information.
Right.
The other example that I would give about IoT is our cars are getting much more. I would say it's almost becomes like a computer on wheels. What does it mean? It means they've got the ADAS, which is the level 2 plus or level 3 or level 4, which is like the Tesla, where they are able to not only monitor the surroundings, extract information from the maps, look at the driver, how the driver is performing. That is all the application of IoT, right? Because it's all gathering information and it's storing somewhere on the cloud or cloud prem or whatever that may be. So IoT will continue to proliferate, but I think we are at a stage where we're building systems and processes and software on top of the data to actually glean more information.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So it's like you have an X-ray machine that's collecting all the data, and then what do you do with the X-ray? You know, how do you study that, or an MRI report? Like, then take that MRI report and do predictive analysis on any application.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I always say people have been using thermometer for a long time, and thermometer tells you that you have fever, but you already know you have fever.
Correct.
So what do you do with that information? Obviously, I can go to the doctor,
Right.
but if a thermometer can actually tell me, okay, by the way, you have this temperature, and you should talk to this doctor. And by the way, your calendar looks free right now at this point of time. I can schedule a visit. By the way, the visit can all be virtual. I mean, that
Right.
is the insight and the automation piece that is missing.
Absolutely. So I think this is a great segue into our next question. So fascinating stuff with all the tech, and thank you for giving us the background. Maybe this is a good way to focus on Ridecell. A little bit about the technology. How is it different? Everybody knows about Uber and Lyft. You can get access to a vehicle and move from one place to another with the click of a button. Everything is becoming easy. We already touched base on accessibility and ease of getting things done in today's world. So maybe also talk a little bit about the existing customers, if you can divulge that, or type of customers that you're solving a problem for. And then sort of who are some of the competitors out there that people can say, okay, Ridecell sounds like, okay, this company's maybe also doing that, or maybe they're not. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. On Ridecell, so we have been in business for about I would say more than 6 years. Our vision is to move the world better and faster. We believe that we see ourselves as we are disrupting this $100 billion market globally. We make a software platform that allows the fleet operators, and the way we define the fleet is anyone that owns and operates vehicles, which is cars, could be trucks, could be micromobility. And as the world moves from ICE vehicle, which is the internal combustion engine, to an EV vehicle, to a automated driving / autonomous vehicles, they need a platform to essentially do all the operations. So we are that glue, we are that operating platform. If you look at our value prop, we help our fleet operators increase their revenues by about 80 to 100%, which is almost 2x. And also at the same time, reduce the spend by about 20 to 40%. Our company is solely focused on building the software, so we don't make any hardware. We actually work with our partners to bring any sort of a hardware to make the vehicle connected. Think about, as I was talking about big data, there's lots of information, but you don't know what to do with it. We essentially sit on massive amount of data. We collect, I would say 160 plus parameters of data, which includes the driver, the vehicle condition, the fleet operators, the people that work on the vehicles to manage, operate. And then we also, in terms of the data flow, in terms of the decisions, a simple decision, for instance, a vehicle has got the maintenance light on and it should be taken off the rental queue. It's as simple as that, but that whole process is very manual at this point of time, where the fleet operators understand, okay, that this is the problem with the vehicle. They will text, call, Slack a worker to come and fix the vehicle, and will manually take that vehicle off on the rental queue. When the worker does the job, the vehicle sits there until the fleet operator is told that the work has been performed. But there is no digital proof of record. So on our platform, we are able to create this complete end-to-end business and operations platform. The same challenge happens with one of our customers. They have a huge number of locations across the US, but those locations are open only 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So when a customer, whether it is customer like you and me want to rent a vehicle, or it could be an enterprise customer, such as any delivery vehicles. You can think about UPS,
Sure.
UPS, or Amazon. If they want to rent vehicles, they would actually show up to the location, the drivers. They will do some sort of a 2-point verification check, stand in line for 30 minutes. And by the way, they show up to the location after the office hours or the location is closed, they will not be able to rent it. So they need to show up in between those hours, and they will sign a piece of paper, they will get keys, and then off they go. So completely manual process. So that's kind of the challenge on the digitization of the customer journey that we do through our platform, and also digitization of the workflow around the vehicle. That is essentially kind of the end-to-end business and operations platform, if you will. And if you look at Najeeb, if you look at the market in general, as the world evolves from EV to AV vehicles, there is no need, and Uber and Lyft, they have already demonstrated this case.
For viewers that don't know about the AV, so electric vehicle to autonomous vehicle, correct?
Autonomous vehicles are automated driving vehicles. As the world transitions, there's always an argument of whether do you need 2 or 3 cars per household to 1 or even 0.
Right.
And we have seen that change where the number of driver licenses being issued every year is either flat or is dropping.
In the US, correct?
In the US, right? Because people are obviously living more closely to the city. Obviously, this before COVID, but also they are using public transportation, and they will rely more and more on the fleet side, because the vehicles will be more expensive as you add more and more sensors and make it automated driving. Then in that case, the fleets are the ones who will be, they're already seeing a huge amount of growth compared to, if you look at the total number of new car sales to consumers like you and me. So we're sitting in this market where the fleet is going through the roof. We are seeing that the complexity for the fleets to operate their business, whether the vehicle is being used by a consumer or for the enterprise, or it's used for the short-term rentals or long-term rentals, or it could be used for subscription, or it could be used for the corporate fleets. That complexity is increasing quite a bit. And then the third piece is the regulations. If you look at especially the regulation that is coming hard, is how are you using those vehicles among the shared customers or shared fleets? And we are sitting in that unique spot where our platform is a plug and play for the fleet operators to utilize our platform and then orchestrates all this complex workflow that happens not only on the customer journey side, their customer journey side, but also on maintaining those vehicles.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a fascinating point. The point about US new license rates going flat to declining, right? And I've read somewhere about this technology and how it's changing the world, and how you guys are in that sort of prime seat to be that disruptor. Is the fact that in the Western world, you see ownership of vehicles been going up and up and up and up, just with more purchasing power abilities in the US. And then now you're seeing a decline in car ownership, but as far as mobility goes, there's more of it, obviously, with Uber, Lyft, and all these, technology disrupted mobility services out there. The rate at which people are going from having no cars, having access to mobility or a car on their phone, that's accelerating at the fastest pace than even the Western world. Is that how you also see the opportunity in those developing markets where your technology will just catapult those young population into mobility? And will that be the new infrastructure that creates opportunity and growth?
You're spot on. So obviously, I come from India. I can tell you, India, when the US had the landline phones. India did not have that sort of a penetration of landline phones, and the landline phones, and then the cell phone came. India did not go to the landline transition. They went straight to cell phones. And it was such proliferated that everyone has got access to cell phones, even the farmers, right? Of course, there's a huge benefits to their own, what they do on a daily life. And I see the same thing happening with the transportation, where yes, the standard of living is improving. People can buy and access vehicles, but they're also seeing there is a huge amount of congestion that takes place if they want to use their own vehicles. And they're going straight to essentially using either Uber or Ola or other sort of like the mobility
ride sharing,
focused ride sharing. The other classic example is Zoom Car, which is actually one of my good friends, Greg Moran, who is co-founder and runs the business there in Bangalore, has seen where vehicles are being shared among different folks, and that business model is taking off pretty rapidly. And that is true in India. That will be true in other emerging countries as well.
That's just fascinating stuff. So with interest of time, I'm going to just go into the question of for investors and entrepreneurs, if that's okay, Shiva.
Absolutely.
So, you know, for investors or entrepreneurs that are watching this show and listening to you talk, a lot of them this is a new space in many ways. The sort of the technology, right? The problem Ridecell is solving, and this new ecosystem of automation, AI, IoT all coming together. We just talked about how we're going to see this exponential growth happening so quickly in developing countries. That all those variables obviously create new opportunities, right? We've seen that. We're seeing that in EV in general, right? There's a TMSC, the Taiwanese chip company, coming to the US, spending $100 billion. That's going to create a whole new supply chain, right? Or they're going to need a lot more services and products that's going to go into this new ecosystem. So similarly, if you think about Ridecell, the digital platform, and just the entire ecosystem that it's playing in, what would you advise to the entrepreneurs or the investors to look out for opportunities where, you know, they can invest in, they can put their money into or time into to organically grow into this ecosystem and provide a solution that is of need?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, if I look at the automotive space or the mobility space in general, it has got huge implication across not just the mobility, but how people use vehicles, consume vehicles, and that affects their day-to-day lives. So I'll give an example. If you're driving on a freeway and you're going from, say, San Francisco to LA on a long trip, and if these are essentially you're driving, obviously you will take exits that will to fill gas. You stop at the gas stations, or you will stop at In-N-Out, which I always do. But that sort of like, and then when you go to LA, you will park in parking spots. All of that, the whole end-to-end is going to be disrupted, because you are not the one who is driving the vehicle. You're essentially the one who is almost like a train. You might not, if it's an EV vehicle with 400 miles on a single charge or 500 million miles on a single charge, you're not going to take a stop. You might
Right.
take a stop or might not take a stop. The vehicles will come with some sort of a food, beverage, like there was a vending machine in
For
Uber.
sure.
So you are essentially disrupting the restaurants, retail industries along the freeway, but also you're disrupting, when you get there, the parking industry. And then the whole way of economics of how the vehicles are being utilized, right? So the vehicle now is going to be back while you're still in LA.
Sure.
When we think about our and the implication there is there will be fewer OEMs that exist than that exist today, even though there are a lot more OEMs are coming up, newer OEMs on the EV side. It's only because the industry is going through a disruption and there is no clear winner. I mean, obviously Tesla has got a great market position right now, but there's no clear winner, or at least two or three. There will be a lot of massive consolidation that will happen, and whoever has got the better technology at a cheaper cost is going to win. So there will be consolidation. There will be fewer OEMs. There will be a lot more fleets. And then when you think about the digital infrastructure that is needed to not only it starts all the way from the testing vehicles. So there is a huge regulation that is coming up with NHTSA, where they are mandating the OEMs to report crash whenever the accidents happen, report to them. And that's sort of because what is happening is the vehicles now getting into accident. Is it the human error, or is it the vehicle error or software error? And that, because we are going to more and more on the automated drivers with the manual workers. So I think there is the automotive mobility space, in my mind, is undergoing a significant disruption, right from the time the vehicle has been designed all the way to how the vehicle has been used, and ultimately how the vehicle will come to a end of life. And you need a platform, potentially either a single unified platform for an OEM, or it could be a multiple software platform that sits on top of these application services. And there will be a lot more application that will come into future. So if I were an entrepreneur and investor, I'll focus on security for sure, because the security is going to be a big issue as the vehicles are getting more and more connected. And though the data privacy, the data security is going to determine how the vehicles are being utilized. The data security is going to be huge. At the same time, a lot more services that comes along with it, which we have already started to see, is how the vehicles are essentially become your third, home, office, and vehicle is becoming your third most important point, where you can do all sorts of transactions, consume services.
When you're not driving, it's driving you, and it's just like you have all this extra time.
Exactly.
Finally, if you don't live in New York or Chicago, where you take a train to work, you can now read the Wall Street Journal in your hand, or any other.
My pet peeve is like it's not a 10-hour workday. If you have to go to the office, you're essentially spending 12, 13, 14 hours because of the commute. And you essentially, that's a dark spot that you completely lose your time.
Correct.
But I think it's an exciting space. There's a lot to be done. Right now, everyone is focused on, at least the capital markets is focused on the EV transition. I don't necessarily think that there will be a lot more players who will come in the EV space, and especially in the AV space. But more importantly, if I have to put my money on something, it's probably the application layer, where a lot more services are being provided.
So you think there is room for more application providers that can conjoin the sort of bigger OEMs that already have their applications and software, or you like Ridecell has its application and software, like, can you help us kind of understand that dynamic? Like, how do you view that the room left to have more services coming along, smaller businesses partnering up or providing a need to these bigger guys before they swallow them, right?
Yes, there were a couple of companies that I've come across where provide payment solutions that are already integrated into vehicles. I think that is a classic example where you're not only using the vehicles to pay for when you're filling the gas, but also for the tolls, but it could be a lot more when you're essentially ordering a takeout, for example, and you're stopping at a grocery shop or a restaurant to pick up, the payment has already been made. To all the way to the marketing services, where we have seen some of the companies actually do that, some on smaller scale, but some on larger scale, where you can, I can see in my car when I'm driving for half an hour, 1 hour, I see that the oil level goes down. It actually gives me a recommendation that so and so gas stations are close by. So do you want to take an exit? And by the way, that gas station also has a food mart, so you want to grab a coffee, right? So building that application layer connectivity to the local services, I think is going to be, that connecting the last mile is going to be very important. And then there are also one of the biggest challenges right now in the industry is the last mile delivery, where the routing mechanism, I think people have come up with, like, for example, I think it was a UPS or USPS mandates the drivers to make only the right turns, not the left turns. And then main reason is because they have, on a big data perspective, they've realized that is the most efficient way to do it. But that might not be efficient in that for that specific driver for that specific location. So the routing software that can help the logistics driver to customize their route such that they're able to deliver much more efficiently, less time, will be huge. So I think there is, the sky's the limit when it comes to the automotive here.
Cool. All right. Well, we have about right under 10 minutes. So let me go into the next question here. So, as CFO, strategist, where do you see Ridecell as an organization in the next, 5 years from a growth perspective? What markets you want to enter? What areas of services you want to expand upon? And sort of on the capital side, are you guys looking to stay private, IPO? I know these are not always planned exactly, but if you can shed some light on sort of exit strategies or what's the kind of long-term plan as well.
Yeah, so on the growth side, we have been focused on large commercial fleets as well as the OEMs, and we have seen some incredible success there. We just recently won a very large fleet.
Congrats. Yep.
Thank you. With more than 1 million plus vehicles. Also on some of the large OEMs, we are working closely with them. So in terms of the growth, in terms of the value prop, I think our for the next 5 years, we're going to continue to ramp up on these specific customer segments while we develop newer products. Our goal at the end of the day is to essentially be the independent third-party software provider, where we are essentially the operating system, or as we call it, the ERP for mobility. And that will involve working with the ecosystem partners, whether it is hardware, telematics, whether it is insurance companies, whether it is operations company, but essentially creating a value to the fleet operators. That is on a business side, that is going to continue to be our focus. On the strategic side, whether we are obviously a private company right now, we raised, I would say, pretty healthy amount of capital last year and this year, and we have a good runway for the next couple of years. But as I was a banker or a recovery banker, I would always say that we are opportunistic. We are always looking for what makes sense for the company in a grand scheme of things, whether it creates value for the shareholders at the end of the day. So whether it is going IPO, whether it is raising more capital privately, or M&A, whatever that may be, obviously we will continue to consider and discuss.
Awesome. And so next question is, what career advice and personal advice can you give our young viewers that are watching, that are aspiring to be leaders like you, that want to be in your position? Everybody wants to be successful. What do you give? What's the best advice? So a few advice that you can give them.
Well, I would give the same advice as I give to myself. to be honest, on a daily basis. And I will give the same advice to my kids, especially my elder one, who is a 13-year-old, and at this age he questions everything, including what's the meaning of life. So
Still trying to figure that out. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I would say that there's one thing that I have to say is pursue your passion. You figure out where you want to spend time, learn the craft, what really motivates you at the end of the day, and then work towards it. And again, I'll go back to because this incident is obviously recent, but also I was very close to my dad. When I was 2 months ago, when he was in the hospital, it was like he was in the ICU, and just a few hours before he passed away, I was holding his hand, and I was thinking to myself, what would I be thinking if I were in his shoes in this bed, reflecting on my life? So obviously, he was 80 years old. So people can think, well, I've got another 40, 60 years left. But it really, the time flies. So you should be thinking from that perspective. What would I be thinking if I'm in that situation? What's the legacy I'm leaving? And if you figure out what ticks you, what motivates you, and you work towards it, I think it will be greater good for yourself, but also greater for the world as well.
That's awesome advice. Thanks, man. I was watching Jim Carrey's motivational speeches last night. I was going to sleep, and kind of resonated with what you just said too. Like, you got to remind yourself that life is short. There's no guarantee. Be humble. Do what pleases you and keeps you happy. It's not about the last dollar. It's about fulfillment, right?
Exactly.
So thank you for that. That's much appreciated. So speaking of talking about young people, we have, as you know, we have interns that are from different universities. So I'm going to try to do a question from each intern for every guest that I have. So today's question is from Tinsley Park's intern Kai Fang. He's a student, he's an undergrad junior at NYU. He's studying mathematics, business, and data science. This guy's doing a lot over there. So his question to you—
sounds like a rock star.
He's a rock star. He's definitely a rock star. Really fortunate to have him this semester. So he asks, within Ridecell and your products, what is your eventual goal with automation? At a certain point, do you see advancement in automated technologies as a threat or an achievement for the future? I think he's talking about, like, is AI going to eat us up?
Yeah, I think for Ridecell, the automation is important because I think we are still in that inflection point of sitting on massive amount of data, but we don't know what to do. And we have, for our customers, we have unlocked a huge amount of value through automation. So as I mentioned, where we increase the revenues by 2x, reduce spend. Our goal is to basically achieve the automation and be the central ERP system for the fleet operators. And the way I think about how Ridecell is evolving is a business in a box. So if tomorrow, if you want to start a fleet, and if you want to start a fleet of 1,000 vehicles, 10,000 vehicles, 50,000 vehicles, all you have to think about is, okay, I'm going to get Ridecell, and they will figure out from a technology perspective how everything will going to work. All I have to do is get vehicles, purchase the vehicles, whatever that may be, cars, trucks, e-scooters, and Ridecell will provide this very simple, off-the-shelf business in a box. Will allow me to kickstart my fleet operations within a couple of hours. And so that's our goal. But I would say, from a fleet perspective, from an OEM perspective, there are lots of things we are doing on the test vehicles as well as the production vehicles. And the production vehicles are the vehicles that we use. and it is still scratching the surface there. In terms of the automated driving, look, I think different people have different views on automated driving, whether it's a good or a bad. I think it's a huge benefit to all of us. I mean, I just don't like driving. I mean, I don't think my son likes driving. I would rather be in the front seat or in the back seat.
Especially in California. I mean,
especially in
I'm in Houston. I could say the same, though I don't have a very long commute, thankfully. But yeah, especially in California.
So I would love to get the hours back.
Right.
Where I can be much more effective,
more productive,
spend time
yeah.
with family, friends, on the work that I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, I would love to be in a position where in 5-10 years, my kid doesn't have to drive. You know, I don't have to worry about him getting into an accident.
Right.
I think that'll be huge.
Awesome. Well, that concludes all the questions I had for you today. I think we just crossed a little over an hour. I think we did well.
Well, thank you, Najeeb. And look, it was a pleasure to be here. And I'm positive, I'm certain that we will continue our conversation.
Awesome. Do you have any closing thoughts or any questions or comments before we depart today?
Yeah, I think for me and for also the viewers, like how can individuals like I or founders or entrepreneurs work with you as they figure out how they're scaling, or even in terms of merging or working with other larger strategics?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. So Tinsley Park's broken down into two different businesses right now. We're an advisory business where we help folks like you that are in the C-suite looking for corporate development or any strategic initiatives that need external help. You don't want to hire a big investment bank, but we're a boutique advisory firm, guys that have worked in private equity in the past and are currently looking to build private equity platforms, which I'm going to talk about. Tinsley Park Partners is our independent sponsor vehicle. So we are looking for entrepreneurs that are at that sort of, stage in their career where they want to recapitalize their business, get some growth capital, get to the next level of growth, and ultimately have a 3 to 5 year exit window. Typical majority recapitalization kind of a process, but ideally in tech, right? They're in high growth mode. All the business opportunities we talked about in EV and all the services are going to come up eventually. A lot of folks are looking at this growth trajectory and going, man, I need to plan ahead of time. So one of the unique things that Tinsley Park is doing is we're offering an owner operator an opportunity to participate at the general partnership with us, which a lot of established private equity funds that have been around, they just want you to come and be an operator. So, happy to discuss in more detail if we connect with entrepreneurs, but always looking for ways to help them get to the next level with their strategic initiative, whether it's organic, whether it's growth, whether, through M&A or even if it's, some market studies, international or local, and looking at different ways of expanding their businesses to get to the next level.
That's great, Najeeb. I can say we're working with entrepreneurs in the last, I would say, several years. Entrepreneurs are really good at understanding what the market needs and the product they want to build, but not necessarily they're super financially sophisticated, like a better word. And they always look for partners. And I think the value that you bring to the table is immense. And I do see that companies, entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and across, they can leverage that value when they don't have to create something from scratch.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No, and we're not operators per se. So we love to work with operators that have built a business that understands the domain expertise. And I think, with that already in place, it's a great synergy. if our personalities match, our visions match. I'd love to find that sort of great relationship with entrepreneurs to help them achieve their goals. That achieves our goals of why we're in business as well. So thanks for asking that and allowing me to do a little a spiel on Tinsley Park. And listen, with that, Shiva, like really appreciate your time. I'm definitely sure we're going to have another episode at some point in the future, near future. But congratulations with all the success you've had, and thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Najeeb.
Take care.
Take care.